Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Ward. Huge weekend in Atlanta sports. I actually was out on the golf course and I get a text and it's like, I got like 5 texts. Let's go. I'm like, what the hell happened? Like, you know what? Like the Braves don't play till 7 tonight. There's no way anything could happen with the Falcons. I was like, the NBA draft lottery? No way. Hawks get the number 1 overall pick. And I think we said it on the show. If not, we said it on social media. This is the year, of course, that the Hawks are going to get the number 1 overall pick because they've never won the NBA lottery. They've had several chances where they've had, top 4 or 5 picks, opportunities where they have 15% chance of winning it. Never won it for the big guys, the Anthony Davis, the Kyrie Irvings of the world. But they get it this year. And of course, what a lot of people are saying is the worst draft class. But you have to say, having the number 1 overall pick is never a bad thing. So It's always a good thing. It's one of the biggest wins in franchise history.
Yeah, first time since 1975. First time ever with the actual lottery system. We can all boo-hoo about there not being a Victor Wembanyama there kind of is a Victor Wembanyama light, I guess. Fellow countryman Alex Sarr. I might be saying that wrong. I know it's French and sometimes they pronounce it wrong, but I think it's Alex Sarr.
Sometimes they pronounce it wrong.
They pronounce it wrong, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And so it's never a bad thing, like you said, to have the first overall pick. But like most people are kind of pointing out, there isn't that Zion, that Anthony Davis, that overwhelming top prospect that everybody expects the Atlanta Hawks were. You couldn't convince the Hawks to move off of the top pick. That's not necessarily true. But what it does do is it gives Landry Fields in company another piece of capital to potentially make a franchise-altering move. Now, that could be taking a guy like Alex Sarr. That could be, packaging that and Trae Young, or that and DeJounte Murray, or that and whatever package, and maybe bringing a star to Atlanta. It just gives the Hawks more capital at one of the biggest crossroads of an offseason this franchise has ever faced. So in terms of, confidence level, well, we can be – we could distrust the actual guys running the ship, but the ammo seems to be there to do something. The ammo is there now.
I mean, listen, before this offseason, before this NBA draft lottery, my confidence level might have been at a 0 of them getting out of this, because I just felt like ultimately, the runway, we talk about the runway with the Falcons, for them to get all these moves right and make the necessary moves to turn into a contender while Trae Young is still here, was probably as close to 0 as possible. This at least gives you a glimmer. It gives you a glimmer of hope. It's not to say that the Hawks can't screw it up, because they definitely could, and anyone could. I mean, people were saying in jest, months ago, that this is the kind of NBA draft that whoever gets the number 1 pick, a GM is going to get fired because they're going to screw it up, and maybe 3 guys behind them are going to turn into stars, because it's very, very hard to find that number 1 overall prospect. But as we've seen, listen, there's been a lot of these great prospects. Wembanyama's the most recent one, and it looks like he's going to pan out and be generational. But, I mean, think about Anthony Davis. He was generational. How did that turn out with the Pelicans? Zion Williamson, how did that turn out with the Pelicans? There's a lot of examples of there was another one very recent. Kyrie Irving, if he doesn't get LeBron James, you're not winning a championship with Kyrie Irving if they don't get LeBron James to come back. So even the times where it's like you got this clear-cut guy, it doesn't always work out for the organization. And 6-7 years later, you're trading them for a haul of picks and you're restarting all over again. Now think about some of the recent drafts where the teams that have won the lottery. The Philadelphia 76ers traded, or the Celtics traded that pick to the Sixers, got Jason Tatum and a load of draft picks. That was kind of a draft where everyone was like, oh, Markelle Fultz, is he the star? No one really knew who was going to go number 1 overall. Worked out great for the Celtics. Look at Anthony Edwards. The Timberwolves were trying to trade out of that pick. He's now the face of the NBA. So, yes,
the 2 best guys in the Trae Young draft were Luka and Trae, and they weren't out of the top 3. So there you go.
You would like a lot of these. You would like that slam dunk prospect.
Yeah, it would be way better.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that it can't work out, and you have a glimmer of hope.
They're all, at the end of the day, this is the NBA. It's not like a weak draft class may just be in comparative to a Hall of Fame draft class. And that's not to say that there isn't a star somewhere in this draft class that the Hawks can potentially pair with DeJounte Murray, Trae Young, somebody to kind of get this franchise out of the rut it's almost been in, out of the hamster wheel, Chase likes to say, that we've just been on. Constantly in the play-in. It's the girl who's always the bridesmaid, never the bride type thing. And that's what the Atlanta Hawks are. We're just always in the play-in, but never in the playoffs. or at least we're not playing meaningful playoff games. And the hope is, and it doesn't have to be a prospect. Like I said, there's plenty of avenues that Landry Fields and company, Atlanta's front office, can now take with this number 1 overall pick. And half of them have everything to do with trading that top pick.
Yeah, I mean, you could package him with the DeJounte Murray and try to land another star. You could move back in the draft and get more draft capital and build around a young duo or a young trio of whoever you take in this year's draft, Jalen Johnson and Trae Young or DeJounte Murray, whichever one you want to keep. The point is the Hawks roster is young, and now they have a chance to get another franchise cornerstone to pair with Jalen Johnson and, like I said, DeJounte Murray or Trae Young. And it didn't really look like they were probably going to have that chance when they were picking around the 10th, 11th pick. Now they have a legitimate opportunity to do that. There's a lot of avenues that they can take. I still think it's going to be tough to sell anyone on a rebuild when you don't own your own picks. But I think with this number 1 overall pick, you finally have a clear path to potentially being competitive in an Eastern Conference that, as we've seen, is as wide open as it's ever going to be. I mean, there are no good outside of the Boston Celtics. Anyone could win this conference. If something were to happen, and I'm not cheering for player injuries, but if something were to happen where the Celtics suffered an injury-riddled season, literally anyone could win the East. Like, I don't think the Hawks, even currently constructed, are that far away from what the Knicks and the Pacers are. So if you can land it and land another franchise piece, you can be in the mix. You can be in the mix.
I mean, and that's to say that the Hawks dealt with a myriad of injuries this year. Like DeJounte Murray was out for a point. Trae Young was out for a point. Jalen Johnson was out for multiple points. Those are your 3 best players. Onyeka Okongwu was out. So it's not like the Hawks, injury is bad luck, good luck, whatever it is. Some players are just, injury prone, but Hawks kind of got unlucky with injuries this year. So you kind of,
you could go
reverse it. They get good luck with injuries. They make some upgrades to the roster. They can absolutely make an Eastern Conference.
Hunter missed time. Bogey missed time. Sadiq Bey tore his ACL. Yeah. The entire lineup was injured. It was the most injured that I've ever seen a team. Capella missed plenty of time. The entire starting 5, I think they had like maybe 13 to 15 games where the entire starting 5 was healthy. So yeah, they dealt with a myriad of injuries, and a lot of moves have to be made. I expect them to be made. I think Capella, DeAndre Hunter, DeJounte Murray, even Trae Young are going to be on the trade block. And then you got some younger guys that hopefully they can continue to develop in Kobe Buffkin, Muhammad Gaye, and whoever you draft first overall, or if you trade out and get multiple picks, whatever they want to do. But there's hope. And the only thing you can call the Atlanta Hawks today is the biggest winners in the NBA. And you've never been able to say that. You've never been able to say it. I know that the Nuggets had a big win. I know the Pacers had a big win. But the biggest winners of the weekend were the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, I think you can only look at this as good. And I see some Hawks fans being pessimistic on the timeline.
You deserve to.
And there's reason. I was going to say there's reason. And whether it has to do with the not so stellar draft class as far as the experts are concerned, or the actual folks running the show and the inexperience in the Hawks front office, and just the terrible track record that the wrestlers have had since taking over, there's reason to be pessimistic. But today, the 2 most pessimistic guys about the Atlanta Hawks are optimistic. This should be looked at as a good thing. And at least we have the opportunity to screw it up. I hope we don't. I hope we nail it. I hope we, whatever whatever comes to fruition with the first overall pick, whether it's making the pick or trading the pick, I hope it comes. I hope it's good. Good fortune's coming to Atlanta. But right now, let's just try and be happy for a little bit for the Atlanta Hawks that we never really get to be.
It's relevancy, right? Like, yeah. They're relevant. Like, there are things like for the first time, and I know there are some very optimistic Hawks fans that are constantly do it, but the number one thing that I was thinking about looking up what we can do, what kind of moves we make, who do I want to trade? Is DeJounte Murray, what can he get us? How can we clear cap space and bring in other players that better surround Trae Young? Is Trae Young a trade? Is that really an option? Is there a trade out there, a partner that would make sense? And maybe we go full-fledged, like mini rebuild. Maybe we do deal him to the Spurs, keep DeJounte, get a ton of picks, have these young assets and Jalen Johnson and, these picks, and really start building for the future. Maybe we get our picks back, which I wouldn't mind, and a Trae Young deal with the Spurs. All those things were the first things that I were looking up, not whether the Braves in the middle of the season, how they're doing and how they blew a game, not the Falcons and the Michael Penix and the Kirk Cousins. It was the Atlanta Hawks. That's why we're leading off the show about it. And there's, a glimmer of hope. It's not huge. I'm not entirely confident that everything's going to pan out like we hope, but there is hope. There is relevancy. This offseason is going to be fun. They're worth talking about again.
All you can ask for is they have the opportunity now to right the ship. They have the opportunity. That's all you can really ask for.